Chapter 6. Ive had finally made his way out and away from the lynches and followed the shores of the Jestes coastline to find Primoana. He could see a small village some miles further away and hoped she hadn't gone that far. He continued his search, scanning the shores, and it did not take him long as he scanned the bay to spot what appeared to be Primoana's cloak. He turned off his hover when he reached near the cloak that lay over a stone. He then pulled out and took hold of his double-bladed staff and headed towards the water where he saw Primoana bathing. Relieved to find he found her sound and stable, he lowered himself to the bank and watched her. Primoana to notice him. "Ive," she spoke and covered her breast. "How long?" she started to ask. "Not long," he answered, then continued, as if no need to finish her statement. "I feel bad about Ian. He wasn't ready for that kind of combat, but I'm only glad you're all right." He stood and told her, "You can finish. The day has weakened. I'll set a nest." He turned away from her in search of a spot for the night. It didn't take him long to set up a spot for them to rest as he waited for Primoana. Soon after he saw her approach, coming towards him, only in her grey top and panties. It dawned on him for the first time that she never went anywhere without her cloak. Primoana sat beside him and said, "Thank you." "What do you mean?" "I'm grateful you're alive," he told her. She smiled at his response. "You came quite a way," she said, looking in the direction of the lynch's forest. "All power on the hover," he explained. "What of Copper and Tavo?" she asked. "Don't worry about them. They won't get here till dawn." "So we can sleep?" he said. "Yes," I've told her. "That wasn't a question," she replied and looked about. "Where's my cloak?" "I folded it up," he told her. "Why is it you wear your cloak so often, even in mild weather?" She looked at him and said, "It was my father's. It's the only thing of him I have." "Would you mind speaking about your parents?" "Why?" she asked him. "I'm interested in you. You have a beautiful smile, great body. Why you would hide it baffles me. I understand now why you always wear the cloak, and I'd like to hear your story behind it." "Well, okay," she agreed, smiling. "Well, my father's an immortal. I'm a bit ashamed to admit I don't know how my mother and he met, but I do know he didn't stick around. My mother said she never knew who my father was until after they had slept together. He said it was like he consumed her, like in a dream. My mother was with child for almost 3 eons. "Damn," I've said in shock. "Yeah, and when I was finally born, he said it took forever for me to start growing. Every 3 eons, cycles, it's like 1 eon with me." "Wow," I've commented, shaking his head. "It drove my mother crazy. She thought it was her." I've interrupted her, asking, "Did she find out you were an immortal child?" "Yeah, and she found out she was an immortal as well, after being with my father. He made her immortal after lying with her. She killed herself after raising me to a certain point of overstanding, or something like that. That's at least what I really know, because I don't." "Please, I'm sorry," said I. "No, it just made me see things differently," she told him. "Do you know anything more about your mother?" I've asked. "Just memories and what she looked like," she answered, and then asked, "What about you? Your dreams?" He made a not-so-sure face. "Oh, come on," she pressed. "I'm not ready to talk, not just yet," he said, remembering his strange dreams of her that he'd had in the past. "Why?" Primoana asked. "This night is about you, okay?" he said. He paused for a moment and then agreed. "Okay, what else do you want to know?" I've looked up and down her body. "What are you looking for?" She smiled at his humorous examination of her body. "You don't have any cuts or open wounds," he stated. "My drop has come," she explained. "Yeah, when?" he asked. "Before we left, but don't tell anyone," she told him firmly. "You should be happy your drop has come." Ive was confused. The females he knew in the village were always so pleased when this happened to their bodies. "Yeah, I am, but I just don't want people to know yet." Ive's thoughts were clouded. "Would you not want," he started to ask, and then thought about it before continuing. "Well, Copper and Tavo, no one, Ive," he said again. Ive was completely lost. "Copper won't say." "I know he won't, it's just that." She broke off and took a deep breath. "What? Tavo?" he asked, trying to dig deeper about her confusing attitude on the situation. "No," she replied firmly. "It's Tavo, isn't it?" he guessed, but received no response. "Your blood?" "Yeah, I just don't trust him when it comes to my blood," she confessed. "He's going to wonder why the lynches came after you," Ive said. "So we tell him you tripped, walking too fast." Ive was pleased with his solution. "Scratched my knee," she said, and looked out at the island of Caution. "Right," he nodded in agreement. Primoana was tired and laid down with a yawn. "Only you and Rai know, and only we shall know," he assured her as he laid down beside her. "Sorry I'm not good company right now," she yawned again, "but I'm exhausted." "I overstand. Get some sleep," he replied, watching Primoana drift into sleep. It wasn't long before she was fast asleep. The night passed swiftly. Dawn was just breaking as Tavo and Copper came through the forest, leaving the lynches behind. "I hope they didn't go into that village," Tavo said, pointing to the dwellings a distance away. "I doubt it," Copper replied. "That's the little division, Kinyo, the small people. We'll walk along the bay towards the village and hopefully see them before we reach Kinyo," Tavo decided. "Maybe we don't have to look too far." Copper's gargoyle vision was far superior to that of mortal eye, and he could already see them clearly some ways down the shoreline. When they reached the two prone bodies, they were sleeping comfortably together. The weather was mild, and they saw that no fire was needed for warmth during the night. "Should we wake them?" Copper asked. "Yes, time is upon us. We will get rest soon," Tavo told him. Copper called out to wake them. "Ive, Primoana, it's time to move on. Get up, sleepyheads." Hearing their names being called, they both awoke at the same time, and both looked slightly surprised to see at how close together they had slept, but neither one looked uncomfortable at the closeness of their bodies, figuring they just had to use each other's comfort. It wasn't a big deal. They quickly got to their feet. Tavo gazed out over the sea and then studied the land. He then barely spotted an island further out. "Is that Caution?" he asked. Copper turned to look and replied, "I think so, yes." "Wait," Primoana said with a puzzled look. "I just saw that island last night." "Okay, so," Tavo said, "why so shocked?" "It was closer. I know it was," she told them. "Come to think about it," Ive said, looking out at the island. "It was closer to the shore last night, I've noticed." "The island of Caution actually formed on the backside of a turtle," Copper clarified. "One of the largest known turtles, on Cretan." "Tell us more about this moving island as we move," Tavo said, as he began to walk away. "I've never been there. No one other than my kind has been there, so I overstand." "Caution is the name of the turtle as well as the city," explained Copper. "Is Caution stuck? 'Cause the last I heard, turtles do dive beneath the sea," Primoana asked in humor. "No. Caution left the big deep sea so that predators wouldn't eat at its open flesh. It was forced to move constantly in an attempt to avoid the attacks, and one night it decided to crawl onto land, found its way across Cordulia, and settled in Horns Lake. It never left. Coral reefs built up on its back until it looked something like a city, which then brought the gargoyles there in the first place and ended up staying." "Without thinking it would leave?" Moana asked. Copper stared at her in wonderment. What? She threw her hands up. Listen, I may be an immortal, but I'm not that old. How old are you then? I've asked. She looked towards him. Old enough to do what I'm doing. Copper continued on with his story. My mother told me they were watching it for cycles before landing on it. All it did was move about. Why? I've asked. To feed. Every so often, it moves about and eats other sea creatures, even gargoyles if they fly too low near the turtle's head. Other sea creatures that must have come through the riverbanks, Primoana calculated. I wonder what its movement feels like, I've said. Probably like a quake, Primoana guessed, wondering the same thing. The group of now 4 walked a good way before coming to what appeared to be a village, but it seemed dead, as no life was anywhere to be seen. From where they stood, it appeared to be quite a small town, with only a few cabins. Far from where they stood, he noticed a few cabins, and 3 big boats were bobbing on the lake, taking their attention away from the lifeless village of Kinyo. The group decided to skirt the village and headed towards the boats. Whoa! A ground-shaking thud came behind them. I've spun quickly, reaching for his double-bladed staff, but was not quick enough. Immediately, he was yanked off his feet and held hanging by his neck from the hand of a gargoyle. You will die, were the only words from the gargoyle's lips. No, wait, Copper shouted as 2 more gargoyles swooped down from the sky, landing noisily and practically on top of the foursome, their wings spread out so that no one could escape. We come without threat, Primoana told them, looking at each other. Thaw out, I've choked out as the gargoyle continued to hold him dangling. The gargoyle holding Ive glared past his captive and spotted one of his own that appeared to be with these intruders. You have been enslaved, the gargoyle questioned Copper. No, far from a slave. This is my family, Copper told them. Hearing Copper's words, the gargoyles eased and lowered their wings. Ive was released to the ground. My name is Copper, Copper continued. I come to speak with the king of our quest. What is this quest? The largest gargoyle asked. I can't speak of it yet, but I swear by the death of my parents that I am not against you. You look like you have been tamed to me, one of the gargoyles said, looking at Copper's garments. This is my first journey to my homeland, Copper said, trying to explain. Understandable, the 3 gargoyles nodded to each other in agreement. Wondering why he stood clothed was accepted to do the fact he was raised by his own kind, as they stood as they lived, naturally nude. Satisfied that they were under no threat, the gargoyles led the group to one of the cabins where they could rest until they could sail. Primoana could not hold back a giggle as they followed the gargoyles. What's funny? I've asked, still rubbing his throat. Nothing, she replied, after swallowing her laugh, thinking how truly humorous it was to see these beings have such pride in their nudity. May I ask why we do not sail now? Tavo asked. In response, one of the gargoyles pointed towards the island and said, Can you see that pole on the other side of the island? Yes, I see it beyond the city, Tavo nodded. Until that pole is on the side facing us, or at least close enough so that we can boat our way directly across, we cannot set sail. Because the turtle will eat us? Tavo answered his own question. Yes. The largest gargoyle confirmed to Tavo before walking over to the other 2 gargoyles. Tell the king of these ones, he told them. You and Copper can rest now, Primoana said to Tavo. Ive and I are well rested. Yes, I think we will, Tavo told her, and then asked, The lynches? Yes, Primoana replied, knowing what he was going to ask. Why did they attack you? I tripped and cut my knee, she said, thrusting her knee forward. But as you can see, I've healed now. No scar was visible, and his skin was smooth and flawless. Be more careful, Tavo scolded her, thinking of his lost fighter. I shall. The lynches give me the creeps. She shrugged her shoulders. Tavo laughed. I bet they do, but you are safe. That's all that matters, right? She laughed and agreed. Yeah. She watched as Tavo went into a cabin to get some rest. Copper stood outside Tavo's door. Are you going to get some sleep? Primoana asked Copper. I'm not tired, Copper told her. Do you want to come and sit with me and Ive? No, somebody has to watch over Tavo, Copper said. Oh, okay, she said, drawing out her response, and then turned in an awkward manner, walking away to join Ive, who was sitting on top of one of the cabins, watching the island in Horn Lake. Ive looked down when he noticed Primoana walking in his direction and called out to her. Don't come up here if your company isn't any good, he joked. Primoana laughed and called back. I'll most likely fall asleep on you as soon as I get up there. Aw man, Ive complained. She laughed again as she teleported up beside him, then leaned against him and faked a snore. Aw, that's so pathetic, he told her with a chuckle. As they sat and waited to move on, they looked to see if Copper was still awoken. He just sits there, Primoana says. He doesn't trust the other gargoyles, said Ive. They look older than Copper, but he's just as big, she noticed and asked. Do you think he could take them? He has been training. Ive looked at Copper, assessing the young gargoyle, and nodded. With our help? Hells yeah. After a short while, one of the gargoyles called out, Let's go! They all boarded and set sail. Tavo and Copper sat close to the back of the boat, but Primoana and Ive preferred to roam about. One of the gargoyles controlled the ship, another sat in the bow, and the third took to the skies to watch for any troubles in the waters and to make sure Corshall remained still. It took several hours to reach Corshall, and the sun had already sunk. It was dark when they finally disembarked and stepped onto the island. 2 large gargoyles stood guard at the front of the main entrance to the city and watched as the newcomers took leave of the ship. The guards, paying more attention to the clothed gargoyle that led the group than strangers following him off the ship. Copper walked toward the 2 that stood blocking the city's entrance, all the time taking in the sight of the outside of the large, amazingly colorful city, pinks, greens, yellows, oranges, grays, reds, browns, whites, blues, and even shades of purple, all entwined and sparkling throughout the coral reef that made up the castle-like structure. Beautiful was the only word that escaped as he saw free-spirited gargoyles fly about the coral spires, soaring through the tall towers of the housed reef. Halt! One of the gargoyle guards demanded as the group approached the entrance. Who are you? Why is it you come? Identify who is with you. My name is Copper. I come to speak with the highest of a mission. They are my family and companions. The guard nodded and spoke. I give you fair warning. You and your companions will die if we think or suspect otherwise. Overstood, Copper replied. And, continued the guard as he eyed Copper's garments in distaste, you must remove this clothing you possess. That is not of our nature. Copper looked at his garments and hesitated. Now, or leave, the guard instructed. You will not make a mockery of our kind in the presence of our king. Copper did as needed to enter the city. So used to wearing his bits of clothing, he now felt so embarrassed to be in the nude in front of his family, and of course, Primoana couldn't contain herself but to reach out, lift Copper's tail, and smack his bare bottom. With pride, Copper struck them cheeks, she giggled at him. Ive shook his head at her. You're crazy. Copper turned and cut his eyes to her. Now, that was very helpful, he said sarcastically. Anything to help, she grinned in reply. Can I smack it again? No, I'm okay from here, he said indignantly and said, let's go. They followed the guards who led them into the city. The ground on which they walked was clearly the actual shell of a huge turtle, a dark green color and a goldish faded yellow. It could be assumed someone was cleaning the turtle's topside. There were also many tiny holes in the coral reef walls, and open doorways from the top to the bottom led to living spaces. Naked male and female gargoyles and their young offspring covered the surroundings in unity. It truly was a joyful sight, as gargoyles flew all about in a multitude of greys and blues. "The king resides in the middle tower," stated one of the guards, pointing ahead. "Your friends stay. We shall fly to him," he told Copper. "Is there another way?" Copper asked. The gargoyle looked at him in question. "My wings were lit to flames by a dragon," explained Copper. "Then I shall fly you to him." He stepped behind Copper, grabbed Copper's armpits, and they took flight. "Come, we bring you to shelter," the other guarding gargoyle said to Ive, Tavo, and Primoana. Copper felt exhilaration as he was lifted into the air. Even though he couldn't do the flying himself, it brought him back to the times he could. The flight ended too soon for him, and he was suddenly dropped at the king's doorstep. "Remember," the guardian gargoyle said. Copper nodded, remembering what it feels like to fly and the warnings prior. He continued ahead. He walked through a blinding trail of hanging beads. Once through, Copper immediately saw 9 male gargoyles that seemed to be on standby, an unseated throne built for a king with a rough elegance to its build, made of mainly gold and silver materials. A lovely female gargoyle emerged and approached him out of nowhere, for he was not aware of where she had come. She had long black hair and tiger-like eyes. She swished her tail back and forth with each step, making her hips swing in a sexy rhythm, approaching him. "You look for my father?" she asked, as she came to a stop right in front of Copper. "Yes," Copper gulped out as he stared at her beauty, blood flowing to his phallus. "I'm Tennis. What is it?" Her words cut short as her eyes dropped to Copper's loins, noticing his phallus growing and rising right in front of her. "Did I touch you or something?" she asked. Feeling the sudden heat and discomfort from his member, he quickly covered himself and answered, "No, I'm sorry." She gave him a small smile, acknowledging that his erection was out of innocence and out of his control. He found it quite charming. "I'll get my father for you," she told him, and turned to walk away. "Thank you," Copper told her. He couldn't help but gaze at her voluptuous bottom as she walked away. He needed to control himself as he felt his phallus getting harder. Moments later, the king and Tennis returned, and the king sat down in his throne. He looked like any other gargoyle, but much older. Still in physical shape, his long grey hair was nearly white. His throne room was made of nicely hand-carved gold, silver, and royal crystals. Large gargoyle heads were carved in silver and perched at the top of each side of the throne. Gargoyle heads carved at the top of both sides out of silver. The whole lobby was beautifully designed. Colorful silk and satin hung from the walls. Suede carpeted the floors, and the statues of their culture were positioned all around. "What is this mission you speak of?" the king asked Copper. "Me and my companions are on a trail to kill Dragon." The king looked upon him. "You look young. How old are you?" 54 seasons, Copper answered. "I can't help but ask this. But why do you stand like that?" the king asked, wondering why Copper's hands were cuffing his phallus. I, Copper stammered. A slid glance over look at Tennis, who was smiling at me. "I'm not used to being nude," Copper told the king. "Gargoyles have pride in their nature, and you the same," the king began to lecture. "Father," Tennis interrupted. The king turned to her in question. "Yes, daughter. I think he is attracted to me. and he does not want to stand in front of you with a stiff phallus." "Is this true?" the king asked Copper. Copper was not sure how he should answer. He looked back at Dennis as if seeking help, but she was looking at him as if nothing were wrong. So he told the truth, which seemed to be the best thing. "Yes, she tells no lie," Copper continued. "And I have never really met another female of my own culture, besides my mother." Then the king looked at Dennis and looked back to Copper. The king was silent, and then, as if coming to a decision, the king rose and said to Copper, "Come, let me show you something, young Copper." He stepped down from his throne's platform and exited into a side hallway. Copper followed. "I will stay out here while you go with my father, Copper," Dennis called to him, "so you don't have to, hold yourself any longer." "Thank you," Copper said to her in passing, trying to keep his eyes off her body as he followed the king. They passed 4 doors before entering the 5th one on the left. Upon entering the room, the king grabbed what appeared to be a scroll. The king then turned to Copper and spoke. "Before you tell me anything of whom your friends are, just answer my questions." He opened his scroll, glanced down at it, and then asked Copper, "Is there a Wiccan?" "Yes," said Copper. "A warrior?" asked the king. "Yes," Copper nodded. "An immortal?" the king asked. Copper grimaced, remembering Primoana's smack to his butt cheeks, and responded, "Yes, there is an immortal." The king then looked at Copper and asked, "Are you trained to kill dragons?" "Not to kill them as in the know-how, but I've seen my father kill a dragon once." "Can you fly like a creature of the sea?" "I haven't flown since I was very young," replied Copper. "Why is that?" Copper opened his wing. "I only glide now." "You are so unprepared, and your fate will quickly come," the king told him. Copper could not respond. "Get some rest. I will put you in shape," the king told him, and turned to walk away. "If you don't mind me asking," Copper spoke to the king's retreating back. "This scroll, it is your fate," the king told him. Copper nodded, accepting what the king had said, and left the room. The king opened the scroll again to take another look. He never thought he'd see the day the prophecy would be fulfilled, when the Wiccan, the warrior, the immortal, and the gargoyle would bring down dragon. "Father," Dennis called hesitantly, stepping into the room, "is everything all right with the new one?" "He just may be what I have been waiting for," the king told her. "The prophet?" Dennis asked, her eyes growing wide. "Yes, my dear."